Okay, welcome back, everyone, to another great episode of The Human Role. Thanks so much for watching all past episodes, liking, commenting, subscribing. Really much so appreciated from my end. As mentioned previously, we are now in open enrollment season. So we are going to get into the topic and discussion of how to navigate open enrollment. And I have a very extremely experienced colleague of mine in this industry, Casey Shipley. So Casey is the co-founder and managing partner of BlackPoint HR. Casey comes with an extensive background on the HR side of things, definitely knowledgeable of open enrollment. And so we really wanted to get into details on what that looks like for a company. I mean, we are in November now. And so really from this stance, really trying to help guide everyone. I mean, I imagine at this point, if your open enrollment is a normal plan year, you've started your OE process. If you're a different plan year, you can always watch this later. But before we get into the nitty gritty of things, I wanted to have Casey introduce himself, give details on his background, what brought him here into starting and co-founding BlackPoint HR. And then from there, we'll get into details. So thank you so much, Casey, for joining us. But go ahead and have the floor and let everyone know your experience, and then we'll get into the topic.
Great. Thanks, Tiana, and thanks for having me. So I'm Casey. I have been in the HR people talent space for about 15 years now. And my experience really spans across a variety of different industries and company stages. Prior to co-founding BlackPoint HR, I've served in people leadership roles in climate and clean tech, professional services, grocery retail. And then my most recent position, I was the head of people at an ed tech company called Booknook. My professional compass is really guided around my passion for organizations with what I call soulful missions. So I love organizations that are driven by technology innovation and they want to make a meaningful contribution to society through either the services they provide or the technology that they have. At the beginning of 2024, I decided to kind of step outside of my comfort zone, outside of that full-time environment, and start my own business, which led me to co-found BlackPoint HR. BlackPoint HR, we specialize in providing fractional HR executives with extensive experience in scaling startups across diverse industries and growth stages. And our expertise is particularly tailored to the unique needs of the private equity and venture capital-backed companies and their portfolios.
Lovely. Look, I definitely understand the journey on starting your own. So kudos to you and us doing it, because it's definitely worthwhile. But really appreciate you giving details of your background. Really excited to have your experience as we talk about this topic. Open enrollment, to anyone out there, whether you're experienced in our industry or, just kind of getting your feet wet, benefits are really a part of, I would say at least, kind of helping with tenure, right? So as I've talked about, in a lot of past episodes, it is now an employee market, not an employer market. So employees are demanding what they want. And so benefits are a really big, topic, along with the flexible workplace as well. So wanting to get your insight, how, can an employer design a package that is really appealing to their workforce, especially when you're looking at different demographics, people across different generations, right? Just in your experience, when you've been launching open enrollment through your HR time, how have you seen employees kind of navigate those packages?
First, I think it's important that your HR team is proactive in their approach ahead of the open enrollment renewal season. For years, it's always been my practice to survey the employee population at least a quarter ahead of when I anticipate meeting with the broker, the carriers, to do that initial renewal discussion, because it's important for us to listen to our employees and, kind of see what about our benefits are they happy about, and what are they looking to see us offer in the future. Tiana, I think that's super important too, because you're showing your ability to adapt, you're committed to the employee experience. And even if you can implement even one thing from that survey in the new plan year, that's a huge win and goes a long way with, as you mentioned, the retention efforts. Employers should be looking at a variety of demographic factors when formulating their benefits plan and the design there. For example, it's just a fact that millennials and Gen Zers are looking for flexibility in their workday. This could look like hybrid work, remote work, or perhaps a schedule that goes outside of that good old 9 to 5. So that's one area there. Additionally, these two groups really specifically, and there's studies out there that show mental health and well-being assistance is a huge factor when evaluating benefits for a future employer. Take a look at your medical plans. Do your plans allow for LGBTQ plus families to receive the coverage they need? This could include, gender affirming care. Does your policies allow for domestic partner coverage? And that goes just beyond the LGBT community. There are those outside of the community that, just simply don't want to get married. Are we building our plans to allow for that coverage? Do your plans provide a wide network of providers who speak multiple languages? We have employees that, English isn't their first language. And while they may converse in English at work, they, may feel more comfortable speaking with a provider that has that kind of sense of identity there with them as well. And then I also think about employees who need the fertility assistance. But then we go beyond with that, with other demographics, when we talk about open enrollment being a good time to assess your leave policies. We see the ever-growing need for extended parental caregiving leave. Often these leave policies exclude gay men because they're not considered birthing parents. And so I'll say, for example, one of my clients that I work with, I recently worked with their leadership team to change the leave policy to be more inclusive to a paid family leave, which not only extended to, birth, adoption, surrogacy, and foster placement, but also extends to having to accommodate for, a loved one, whether they be sick or elderly and can't take care of themselves. And so we just need to continue to be really mindful around demographics and lived experiences that may not be our own.
Perfect. Look, I would say those are definitely some top trends, because I've also had a couple of episodes where we talked about like the mental health conversations that are going on, right? That typically were not happening many years ago. Definitely not when I came into the industry, right? And now it's more prevalent. But I think that is really a heavy key factor, because employees are looking for that, right? Though just a simple mental health day goes a long way just for people to kind of like reassess, clear their mind. So having that included in a package is really, really critical for people. And people are really looking at these details when they're going through companies, right?
Yeah.
I would say beforehand, people just wanted to get the job and get in with that employer, right? And now it's turning into, hold on, just because you're a big name, let me double check, all of this. Really good points to make. And then I really did like the leave topic. So I know that at times, it's probably pretty standard for people to feel like you just take a leave if, a woman is pregnant. But now there's so many other different variables, right? Especially even outside of the LGBTQ community, we can also talk about the COVID, right? That was another big thing where people may also need to care for other loved ones too. So there's so many different reasonings as to why someone could take a leave. You could be unexpectedly going through a divorce, right? There could be a couple of different things that could really affect, again, your mental health. And so taking that time away versus someone feeling like they just have to come to work and grind through it, and then they could really turn them into being disgruntled, right? And then that could turn into bad performance reviews. So it could be a domino effect. So I really like that you've helped change that with your companies that you're working for, because when you're at a higher level, there are a lot of executives that are naturally just blinded to that, right? So if we go back to the human role, right, the human aspect of HR, you are touching, your employees up front. And so it is very critical for you to know your population, especially trying to figure out ways to connect with your population that could be fully remote or hybrid, and that way understanding what they need. And so Casey did make another good mention of surveys. So I know sometimes it's kind of hard to get out surveys if you can't do it throughout the year, but that is also really critical, right? And I know there are some employees who don't trust that it's anonymous or not, but all in all, you should hopefully be able to get some really good data, and then also connecting with your population, which I think would be really good. Thank you so much for mentioning all of that. And okay, so you also mentioned brokers, right? Having a good broker is really, really critical. What is your experience on how a broker can really add value to an employer during open enrollment?
I actually don't know how companies do it without a broker. If I'm being completely honest, like you said, I've also been very fortunate in my entire career to have worked with really great brokers. They're true thought partners to your HR lead and to your HR department overall. They're advocates for employees. And honestly, it's like having an additional Ben admin on your HR team for no cost, right? Because, the costs are often not being presented to the company there. But typically, what you can expect is that your broker is really going to go to bat for you with the insurance carriers to make sure that your rates stay fair. It's unavoidable a lot of times to renew your plans and not see an increase. But your brokers are really going to be there to make sure that those increases don't hit the company too hard. They're also there to make sure that you are getting what you want from the carriers. They are going to go to bat and say, this is supposed to be part of the plan. This is what we want to see. Can you, underwrite something that this company wants? Your brokers are also going to provide services to your employees, like assisting them with enrollment, answering those questions that oftentimes, are coming to the HR team. But if you're an HR department of like one or, two or three people, open enrollment season is also super busy, right? It's end of the year. We're getting ready to go into the holidays. We got to make sure that payroll, for the year looks good so that we don't have any issues with tax, W-2 documents and everything there. So your broker is really able to step in and help with a lot of that heavy lifting that is especially great for organizations that have smaller, leaner HR teams. I also think about them making sure that enrollments and COBRA administration is another item that brokers can really help with. So I'll be honest with you, again, as I said earlier, I am so thankful that I've never had a bad experience with a broker, but I know that that's out there.
Very similar to you from my stance. And even when I've had to like change certain brokers, it's not necessarily been due to the other broker not being up to par. It's just that there may have been one broker that got us a little bit of a cheaper rate or got us certain plans with another carrier, right? Depending on their relationships. And there was one season I do remember where it was literally a non-negotiable as to what we needed specifically for our employees. They were just, there were certain plans that just were not there. And so getting a broker that can, pull maybe a little bit more of a larger card for you is one thing. And then there are some brokers that may dip a little bit into their commission, to save for longer term. So if you get the right one, it's definitely great for your company.
Absolutely. And I think it's one last thing that I'll add to is I think it's important for businesses as you look into the future of what your headcount's going to look like and your overall strategic growth, make sure that you're identifying brokers who are capable and comfortable working with scaling organizations and company size, because that is a good call out. I've had to move on from a broker because they just simply couldn't support an organization that was beyond 250 employees. And so I think that's also important too.
Absolutely, absolutely. Definitely agree there. So let's get into potential common mistakes. I know as employers and HR people, we try to do all that we can, but sometimes with everything going on, you mentioned year end, you mentioned payroll, and then of course the normal day-to-day employee relations, right? And then you got, open enrollment on top of you. But what have you seen in your experience have been some like common mistakes made by employers that, and how could some of those be avoided?
I'll start with kind of the most glaring one, which is procrastination. Open enrollment comes at a time of year, as I mentioned, where it's super busy a lot of times. And, procrastination can lead to everything being done last minute and often settling for last year's benefits. Do not settle for last year's plans. Believe it or not, employees are so excited and interested to see what new benefits offerings are coming for the plan year. Of course, sometimes I wish that employee excitement would translate into them completing all their open enrollment paperwork on time, but that's a different topic, I think. I think it's also important in that to overcome that, work with your broker and set up a schedule. Hey, and if our OE is in November, then let's start meeting in the summertime and let's craft together what we're looking for. Let's have deadlines set for this is when we should see renewals, rates, all of that. And then from there, you can assign, if you're a team of one, then that's even more critical, is to make sure that you have all your tasks and calendar up to date to make sure that you get everything set on time. It'll help tremendously. Another area of opportunity we see is poor communication. We often have seen open enrollments that are launched with, really little to no information to the employees aside from maybe a benefits guide, which, is great, but it's not super helpful when there's the ability to create other materials that could answer a lot of those questions and save a lot of meeting space on your calendar. Creating one pagers, plan highlights, what's new this year, what's, staying and what's going away. If you don't have this in place, it's going to lead to tons of enrollment errors, missed deadlines, upset employees, especially if you do, some companies like to do an active enrollment versus a passive enrollment. I've seen that before. I personally don't agree with active enrollments, where if you don't participate, you don't keep your existing benefits. But some companies have to do that, which makes the procrastination and the communication element so much more critical. And hold meetings, info sessions, work with your broker, work with the rest of your team. If you have, a larger HR team that can get involved with doing one-on-one conversations with employees if they need it.
Yeah. So I would say only 1 year in 15 years have I had my 15-year career have I had to do active, right? And that was truly when we went from small to large. And it was just changing. We had to change everything that year. And when I mean to tell you, Casey, that yes, employees literally drag their feet to the last minute. I was literally carrying my laptop around this is pre-COVID, obviously. So it was much better to actually see people. I was literally walking around to everyone, please enroll. Do not call me 2 months from now when you don't have benefits. So yes, to your point, sometimes it is necessary to do that, but best to kind of stay away because you don't want people to get into a pickle. And especially depending on the tenure someone is at, there are a lot of people that just don't want to be in systems, don't understand it. They may have gone through the enrollment, but then scroll down and click submit, so all of the things that Casey was saying is very critical when we're talking about how to properly get the communication out to your employees. Try your best not to wait till the last minute. Sometimes you can't help that, but as long as you're staying ahead of it as much as possible. But all of the meetings, your brokers will even do meetings for you. They will even come on site for you. They will help with the documentation. Lean on them as much as possible because that's what they're there for. This is really the time of the season to use them as much as possible. No matter how much documentation you send out, how many times you post something, I think we all know at this point in our career, there's always those last minute stragglers or someone who comes to you, a month or so later. So that's almost kind of inevitable. I feel like, do you agree, Casey?
I would definitely agree with that. And that's why it's just to your point, it's just so important. And sometimes we often are seen as pests or, we're bothering, but it's so critical and so important, especially the US where healthcare is not a right, unfortunately. And so I think that's why I've always been so driven as an HR leader, especially even when benefits was my only focus, just because, to me, I just would not like to see anybody not have coverage when it's being offered.
Yeah, absolutely. That is true because there are other countries that you got to go to a doctor, you just go to a doctor, So it's almost unbelievable. I've worked under a couple of them where they're like, well, I don't even understand. You have to pay for this. Yeah. So that was a good point to call out too. All righty. So let's get in. I wanted to just see if you wanted to get into any client success stories that you might have. I know you've spent a lot of time, in this industry and BlackPoint HR. I know you've had a lot of great things going on with clients. So I wanted to just see if open enrollment works well, and if you don't wait till the last minute and you have your surveys and everything's all buttoned up, any success stories you'd like to share with my network on how, your support really helps companies and then their employees as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So, when I started at Book Nook, it was right before the renewal had happened for the upcoming plan year. And so I spent that first year really listening and learning, about what's important to the employees there. There were very few medical offerings. I think it was just dental and vision, and there wasn't anything beyond that. And really through a lot of discovery and, we mentioned surveys, but also one-on-one conversations, I was able to learn a lot about the employees at Book Nook. And when it came time for me to start having the conversations with the broker, I came there fully prepared with, I want a plan with an HSA. I want an these FSAs. I want employer paid short and long term disability. I think that's critical for organizations to have because your HR department is just not. They're not equipped to be handling medical leaves and doctor's notes and visits and all of that. Push that off onto the disability carrier there, bringing in a wellness benefit that was there. So basically, all of the different offerings that we put together, I did a kickoff call ahead of open enrollment with the entire organization on our company all hands. And this was a virtual meeting because Book Nook is totally completely remote, and sat up there and I had a PowerPoint presentation and shared, this is what I learned in my first year with you all. This is what the survey data has told me is important to you all. So we're keeping these plans. We're one of the big changes that had to happen that did cause a little discomfort was I removed a couple of the Kaiser plans because Book Nook at that time was primarily California employees. But as we grew and expanded, we were in other states that those employees couldn't enroll in the Kaiser. And so I added extra Blue Shield plans so that to kind of offset that there. So I think it's all about telling the why behind your decision. And I received so many notes like Slack and email, like, this is great, Casey. I'm so excited. And, while I, led the initiative for that, I can't take all of the credit at all. It's the employees that gave their feedback and everything there. And we saw a huge increase in benefit enrollment, not just in the health and welfare benefits that we had, but I also made modifications to the 401k plan design and everything there. And we saw a huge uptick in enrollment across all the different benefits that Book Nook offered just from the year prior. And the broker was super excited about it too. So, which of course we know why, but I think it's again too, with that though, I will say part of the story is we did see huge rate increases, which I was really nervous about. I was so nervous. And I just, at the end of the day, it's all about transparency. One of Book Nook's values was always together, always honest, and being transparent in the work we do. I was able to stand in front of the business and say, due to COVID, due to high usage of plans and other factors, we as Book Nook still absorbed a majority of the cost increase and did not pass it on to the employees. But, we couldn't absorb all of it. And so, had to throw that increase in there. And employees generally overall were actually really appreciative of the fact and understanding of, hey, why did this go up? Additionally, when we added that HSA plan, I made the suggestion, the cost of that plan was so much cheaper. And I said, well, why don't we cover 100% of the employees' premium for that plan and fund their HSA? And that will maybe perhaps influence, the enrollments. And we saw, folks really gravitating to that plan because, again, too, looking at the demographics of Book Nook. Book Nook is a younger generation of workers, and a lot of times are using, sticking to those high deductible plans of I have insurance just in case I need it, but maybe I don't go to the doctor as regularly as I should or anything like that. But I want to make sure I have that security blanket. And so I will say I think the summer of 2022 was a bunch of wins for us there.
Perfect. Yeah, I would say don't even remind me of the Kaiser and Anthem fight in California. I lived there for almost 10 years. And yeah, let me tell you, that was always because there's a specific population for Kaiser, specifically, especially in California. And yeah, it's tough depending on your population. So you really have to know your people. But yes, but if you talk to executives, they really lean towards Anthem and don't understand. So that's always a tough conversation. And really going to hear like the rate increases from what at least I've experienced, very similar to what you were mentioning, Casey, is that as long as you're communicating it, but also as long as employees see the plan value, and it's something that they want, they don't mind paying a little bit more for that. And then also understanding that I think I remember one year I had even put in the employer cost compared to what the employee cost was for their enrollment. So they can actually see the company is covering a lot more when it comes to that.
Absolutely. That's so huge. And I mean, total rewards is a whole other topic that maybe we can get to in the future. But that is so critical for employees to be able to see, like, here's what I make as just my, salary hourly rate. But then, oh my gosh, how much my employer is spending per month for me to have health insurance. Yeah, I mean, I think if it's so important to be transparent with that, because I think if more employees had access to seeing that, it'd be a lot more understanding, just if they feel like there's pitfalls or shortfalls of their plans, at least they can see, oh, wow, if I'm paying this much and the employer is paying this much, it's insane.
Yeah, it's drastic. Yes. All righty. Well, all good things. Look, we're already planning our next episode, y'all. So more to come in the future. But thank you so much, Casey, for being on. This is such a great conversation and discussion. To everyone out there listening, please connect with Casey through, LinkedIn. He'll be attached to this post. And if you have any questions about anything HR or anything open enrollment, please reach out to him. Feel free to, of course, connect with me if you have any additional questions. But coming up in a couple of weeks, we'll have another great episode. But Casey, thank you so much for joining. Really great having you on and looking forward to potentially another episode. So,
Thanks, Tiana. Thanks for having me.
okay, thank you guys. We'll see you soon. Bye.
Bye.